What if you could interact with your company data like this?
Hey, I'm trying to make sense of my sales data for the year 2012 in Canada specifically. Do you think you could help me out?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to help you make sense of your sales data for Canada in 2012. To get started, could you tell me a bit more about what specific insights you're interested in? Are you looking at overall revenue?
What we do for the year 2012 in Canada, sales by month and sales by categories and sales by province, and just give me a recommendation based on those dimensions. If you could build out a presentation for me and send that out, I'd like that. And there is your presentation. Without me having to do anything, it was able to generate all that.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's been a minute since I've uploaded last, but for those of you who don't know me or just joining in, my name is Imran and I do content primarily on data analytics and AI in general. And professionally speaking, I'm sort of in the same line of work, lead dev of an analytics platform used by dental practices and dental corporates across Canada. And I also do very heavy data-driven appraisal reports for mergers and acquisitions in the industry. So that line of work sort of got me interested in seeing if I could use AI to build a financial analyst agent. And it's also a practical example that I can use to explain AI concepts and how to apply them in other projects. So this video in particular, I'm sort of going to be focusing on structured data. So when I say structured data, I sort of mean general ledger data, or rather tabular financial data that's very well structured with a lot of numerical values, and how AI should be able to handle that or crunch those numbers. So I'm going to get into the demo, and then I'm going to sort of talk about how the demo works, what methodologies it uses to query in data, and we're sort of going to explore that side of things. So now the concept here would be that you have an AI agent that connects with your accounting system, whether it's Sage or QBO or whatever it may be, and your other CRM or CRMs, consolidates all the data into one view, and you can sort of ask this AI agent different questions, and the AI agent can sort of figure out what business goals you want to know about and give you production ready insights. So this would be a voice agent that you can call using your phone, but obviously since my phone is being used to video, I can't really use it, so I'll just call using the laptop.
Can I help you?
Hey, I'm trying to make sense of my sales data for the year 2012 in Canada specifically. Do you think you could help me out?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to help you make sense of your sales data for Canada in 2012. To get started, could you tell me a bit more about what specific insights you're interested in? Are you looking at overall revenue, regional performance within Canada, product categories, or perhaps sales by sales reps? Or is there something else on your mind?
So why don't we do for the year 2012 in Canada, sales by month and sales by categories and sales by province, and just give me a recommendation based on those dimensions. If you could build out a presentation for me and send that out, I'd like that.
Thanks for sharing those details. So you're interested in seeing how sales in Canada for 2012 break down month by product categories and by provinces. And you'd like a recommendation based on those insights all wrapped into a presentation. Let me start by organizing what you're asking for. A detailed overview of sales trends over the year, segmented by month, product categories, and provinces, culminating in some strategic recommendations.
Perfect.
I'll prepare a comprehensive presentation outline covering these points. Please hold on a moment while I set this up.
Sure.
This will just take a sec.
Sure.
The slides have been generated. If you'd like, I can help you review or discuss the insights once you're ready.
So I'm just going to shift over my screen here. Give me a sec. So it went through this make scenario where it's generating the site, and I'm going to walk you guys through what happens here. But essentially it connects to this AWS VM, and this VM will sort of trigger an RPA workflow. There we go. And then that's going to generate the slides automatically without me having to do anything. So let's see what it does right here. So it's just going through using Gamma to build out the slides. And this is sort of like the prompt that it generated to build out the site essentially. And there is your presentation. Without me having to do anything, it was able to generate all that. I'm still working on it though. All right, so I'm just gonna cancel my flow here. It emails it to me as the next steps, but we can just work from here. All right, so if I scroll back up here, let's see what it actually outputted for me. So it starts off with this cover slide here. Total sales in Canada for 2012 was this much. Ontario led the total provincial sales, BC, and then Quebec was third. The categories that were the best, and monthly sales peaking in May of 2012. And you sort of have different breakdowns here. So you have a tabular breakdown, 35 mil in May, as opposed to all the other months fairly lower. Graphical presentation as well, sales performance by province. Ontario, sorry, that's Ontario accounting for 46% of national sales, and a bunch of other charts and tables. So seasonal trends, category sales generally peak May to July, with accessories showing steadier returns throughout the year, and components peak. Biggest sales for components was May, aligning with total monthly sales peak. So it gives you quite a lot of details, but honestly, if we are being very frank here, this is at best sort of like a high school level or maybe first year business student level presentation. It's not something that useful. But the point of this video is to sort of talk about the foundation of working with structured data. So that's why it's very number heavy, or was engineered to be that way. But obviously, like the more sophisticated systems will have a bit more qualitative data into it. So, what can be done to make this a lot more comprehensive? This is sort of like a presentation that I did previously where I sort of talked about how a system like this works. So you have something called the conversational agent that I just spoke to. And that conversational agent connects to a query-based retrieval agent. And this is the agent that sort of connects to your CRM using an API, or in this case, a Postgres database. And that query-based retrieval agent then passes it down to the general financial analyst agent, all the data. And then this agent will create a prompt that it'll eventually send to the slide builder automation tool. So that's sort of like the framework that I'm working with for this basic model. But obviously you can create a multi-agentic framework to give it a lot more dimensionality. So you can have your general financial agent, and then that can work alongside maybe a tax analyst that'll have a lot of tax insights as to what costs can be used to get certain rebates and so on and so forth based on the documentation that you give it to work with. You can have a valuation analyst that can do some valuation work if that's something you want to do. Maybe do like a bit of multiple, sale multiple. In fact, I've been working on this and I realized that I can add a sub agent here for DCF as well. And then the DCF can be very specialized in doing DCF kind of work. But again, before we need to learn to walk before we can run. So I'm just going to talk about sort of like basic querying of structured data in the following parts of this video. When I first demoed this product, the first question, or the most important question rather, that was asked was, well, how do we know if any of this is accurate? And yeah, you can make like a very complex multi-agentic workflow, and your agentic workflow can do many different things. But if the numbers itself isn't accurate and you don't have a proper foundation to work with, you're not really going to get anywhere with the app that you're building. So I'm going to talk about 3 different ways that you can work with data. And then I'm going to talk about what I use. So the first method is in context, or in context learning, and that's pretty much the easiest way to do things, but it won't give you accurate results. And in context learning is essentially just throwing the data into the prompt. So you can basically put it in the prompt that, hey, give me sales data for 2012.
And then maybe you have like an API call that'll give you a JSON payload of your financial data, maybe your GL data. You throw it into the prompt, and then you let the prompt handle everything. And of course, as AI is modernizing, you're having much higher context windows, so you can throw in pretty big prompts and pretty big raw data within your prompts to actually do this data crunching. Now, the thing is, if you try to crunch within the prompt, you're not going to get anywhere. That's because LLMs cannot do math. Or rather, I should say that they cannot do math in the traditional way that we humans do math. So if you go to a human and you ask it, hey, what's 2 plus 2? Human's just going to go, okay, you got 2 here and you got 2 here. I can put them together and I can get 4, because 1, 2, 3, 4. What an LLM does is it looks at things a bit differently. As the name suggests, it's a large language model and it uses language reasoning. So when you say 2 plus 2, it's going to say, what should the next word be? And based on all the text that it has at its disposal, or rather all the text that has been trained on, it's going to say, hey, I see that whenever 2 plus 2 happens, the most probable answer is 4. And that's basically how it gets the result. And if you want to learn more about foundational model theory and how the full attention model works, I'll put a link in the description. But that's essentially how it works. And when you're at, and for 2 plus 2, it makes sense. It'll get you the 4. But when you're adding a lot more data and you're adding a lot of noise and sort of variability in the data, it's just going to fail in doing the arithmetic. So in context is, typically not the best way to handle this. So another way to actually deal with this is to sort of reduce the noise and variability. So you can do that with a thing called RAG. And what RAG does is it will ground the AI and give it more selective data instead of throwing in all the granular data into the AI itself. So the way it does that is you can sort of take very structured financial data, like your GL data from QBO, say for example, convert it into some text, and then that text can be interpreted by the AI, and the AI can use that text to create vector embeddings, or groups rather, and then it can sort of use those groups. So when you ask it certain questions like, hey, give me sales data for 2012, you'd expect it to pull in only 2012 data from the raw data and then add those together. But even though you're sort of reducing the noise and variability, at the end of the day, you are relying on language reasoning for it to do the math rather than basic arithmetic. So there is no guarantee of full accuracy there. And you always want granular data because you want your agent to be agentic. You don't know what the user is going to ask of the AI, but whatever the user asks, the AI should be able to crunch the numbers from the raw data to give it the desired output that it wants. So in context RAG, these things are typically not working. So with structured data, what I did in this example is I did what I call dynamic query-based retrieval, which is where you're sort of doing SQL queries on the fly. But at the same time, because I want to keep it agentic, I'm going to let the AI generate the SQL queries based on the user queries, and then use those queries on the fly to generate the output. So if you took a look at my workflow here, you can sort of see how it goes through the steps of getting the prompt in and then generating the SQL queries and then sending an email. So this is sort of like the email that it sends out. And this is sort of like the same JSON payload that it sends over to your site builder agent. And I'm just going to go and show you through a JSON formatter what this looks like. So you have like your SQL query that it generates, and it gives you a description of what that SQL query is. So this query is total sales revenue for each month for 2012 across all regions. And this is the output that it gets, total sales by revenue for the product category, and that's the SQL query that it's building out, and so on and so forth. So it's keeping that agentic feel because these are being generated on the fly. It's not something that's like a pre-existing view or something that existed in the database prior. But coming back to whether this actually works or not, so let's take a look at this. So my cover page, it suggests that my total sales in Canada was around about 198 mil for the year of 2012. So I'm going to come into my CRM here, and I'm just going to run this query here. So total dues, the column that I'm using for my sales, from VW denormalized sales. I'm going to talk about this table in a bit, but where country is equals to Canada, and the order date, year of order date is 2012. And I'm going to run that query. And there you go. So it's 198,169,125.4788, which is pretty much bang on with what I got here. Let's look at Quebec, for example, the 38 mil, 521,000. Quebec, the capital Q. You got that 385 mil. And if you want to look at another random sample, for example, okay, let's look at how many bikes were sold, for example. I think that's the right column. So you got 768 million, or was it 1, 2, 3? Give me a sec here. 705. Yeah, 76,841,000. So 76.8 million essentially. So this dynamic query-based retrieval maintains that sort of agentic workflow while also giving you accurate results. Now, it's not to say that this is the only way to do things. There are other ways to do things. So you can use like an Excel model, for example, or even like a Python pandas data frame implementation. Now, obviously, for things like DCF, it would make a lot more sense to go with the Python pandas or Excel model workflow, where it'll work out of Excel and get the results from there maybe. But for these kind of things, the query-based retrieval actually works quite well. So I guess the next step is, how do we actually implement this at an enterprise level? And you sort of saw how I was querying from a table called denormalized sales, and I'd like to talk about that. So basically you have different CRMs that have different API endpoints. Say for example, QuickBooks Online, it does have an API endpoint for their GL data, and it does have IQL with which you can do aggregations or calculations. But again, it's a bit constrictive, and it doesn't work with other CRMs as well, because you might have multiple CRMs in your corporate structure. So the way to do this is to have sort of like a data warehouse that consolidates all your corporate data and host it in a service that allows you to do sort of like on-the-fly CRUD operations. Say, for example, I'm using Supabase that allows for you to host everything on a Postgres database, and that Postgres database can be queried with on the fly from maybe a Python code workflow, or even like a no-code environment like a make.com or maybe N8N even. So that's the first thing you need to do, is to consolidate into a data warehouse or data lakehouse actually, because you want the semantic data in there as well. And then you can sort of query from that database. And then if you're talking about multi-agentic workflows, you're going to have RAG pulls or RAG injections for all those different agents that you're talking about. So I'm gonna take a quick pause here because I realized that I didn't talk about my denormalized data while recording this. But essentially what it is I'm taking my regular RDBMS data, which is otherwise known as normalized data with many degrees of relationship, and flattening it out to maybe up to 1 degree of relationship at max. So you'd have your fact table with your transactional data, and that will relate to dimension tables, which are like your categorical tables. And what that does is it reduces the complexity of relationships within your database, so that the AI has a much easier time building out the queries with much less scope of error. But if you're interested in learning more about how these denormalizing data works or how to make star schemas, I'd recommend the Data Warehouse Toolkit by Ralph Kimball. I'll leave some resources in the description if you're interested in that kind of thing. Once you get that lakehouse sorted, then you can sort of build your multi-agentic workflow to work with that lakehouse essentially. So yeah, that's sort of the first video in this series. It was pretty high level, but If this is something you're kind of interested in, feel free to like and subscribe and comment on whether you want me to go into a bit more nitty-gritty, a bit more detail, or keep it high level, whatever you like. And follow me on LinkedIn. I'm going to have my description on the link because I'm going to share a lot more content there. So yeah, hope you enjoyed that.